The Oxbow Incident. In 1943, Western fans walked into theaters expecting frontier justice. Instead, the Oxbow Incident delivered a gut-wrenching reversal. Henry Fonda leads a posse, chasing suspected cattle thieves, but the climax offers no shootout, no redemption, only the hanging of 3 innocent men by a mob unwilling to wait for the truth. The ending stunned audiences. At a time when Westerns typically celebrated law, order, and heroic resolution, this one pulled the rug out. Director William Wellman reportedly aimed to expose the dangers of mob rule, refusing to tack on a Hollywood-style rescue. Rumors suggest studio executives were uneasy about the bleak tone, and while there's no record of widespread bans, some theaters were hesitant to book a film so out of step with wartime optimism. Critics were split. Some praised its daring realism, while others found it too grim or even unpatriotic. Despite lukewarm box office returns, it earned a Best Picture nomination and later gained recognition as a trailblazer for morally complex westerns. Its legacy? A sharp rebuke of frontier mythology, and a reminder that justice delayed isn't always justice delivered. The Blue Angel. In 1930, The Blue Angel caught audiences off guard with an ending that felt more like a warning than a resolution. Josef von Sternberg's German-language film follows Professor Rath, played by Emil Jannings, the first-ever Best Actor Oscar winner, as he abandons his career and dignity for cabaret singer Lola Lola, portrayed by then-unknown Marlene Dietrich. What begins as a slow unraveling turns into a full-blown collapse. By the final act, Rath is no longer a respected teacher but a broken man forced to perform as a clown, humiliated in front of jeering crowds, and ultimately dying alone in the very classroom where he once held authority. At the time, viewers expected some form of redemption, a last-minute turnaround or moral reset. Instead, they got a brutal descent into ruin. According to film historian Lotte Eisner, the film marked a shift in German cinema's willingness to depict moral decay without offering salvation. Dietrich's performance, icy, magnetic, and unapologetic, cemented her as a global star overnight and redefined the femme fatale archetype. The film's themes of emasculation, power loss, and unchecked desire reportedly rattled the Nazi regime, which banned it shortly after seizing power in 1933. Some speculate the film's portrayal of authority figures brought low was a little too on the nose for a government obsessed with control. The Blue Angel didn't just end in tragedy, it made tragedy the point, setting a blueprint for cinematic downfall that still echoes today. Les Diabaks. In 1955, Henri-Georges Clouzot released Les Diabaks, a film that disguised tragedy beneath the veneer of a classic murder mystery. Audiences expected justice, maybe even revenge. What they got was psychological devastation. The plot follows a schoolteacher and her husband's mistress, who join forces to eliminate the cruel man tormenting them both. But when his body vanishes and paranoia sets in, the real twist emerges. The husband faked his death, and the entire plan was a setup to terrify his wife into a fatal heart attack. No heroes, no retribution, just a cold, calculated manipulation that leaves viewers reeling. The ending was so shocking that theaters reportedly posted warnings urging patrons not to spoil it. Some accounts even claim viewers fainted during early screenings. The film was banned in the United Kingdom for several years, considered too disturbing for release. Clouzot had famously secured the rights to the source novel just hours before Alfred Hitchcock, a move that allegedly infuriated the British director. Some film historians speculate that Hitchcock's Psycho, released in 1960, was partly inspired by the audience-shattering twist Clouzot had pulled off. According to critic Raymond Durgnat, Les Diabaks stripped away the illusion of moral order, a bold move in a post-war era still clinging to tidy endings. Its influence runs deep. From Fatal Attraction to Gone Girl, echoes of Clouzot's bleak finale continue to ripple through modern thrillers. And that bathtub scene? Still one of cinema's most chilling reversals, copied, parodied, and studied for decades. No wonder it remains one of the Golden Age's most infamous films where triumph was promised, and dread delivered. The Third Man. In 1949, The Third Man caught audiences off guard expecting a noir redemption arc. Directed by Carol Reed and written by Graham Greene, the film follows Holly Martins, played by Joseph Cotten, as he arrives in post-war Vienna to investigate the mysterious death of his friend Harry Lime. But instead of uncovering innocence, Martins helps orchestrate Lime's downfall. Though Martins doesn't fire the fatal shot, he leads the police straight to Lime's hiding place in the city's sewers. Orson Welles, in a role that spans barely 8 minutes of screen time, turns Lime into a legend, thanks in part to his iconic Ferris wheel monologue. That speech, partly improvised, coolly justifies corruption with a line that still echoes. In Italy, for 30 years under the Borgias, they had warfare, terror, murder, and bloodshed, but they produced Michelangelo. In Switzerland, they had brotherly love and 500 years of democracy and peace. And what did that produce? The cuckoo clock. The ending defied the era's norms. Instead of reconciliation, Anna, played by Alida Valli, walks past Martins in silence, leaving him alone in a desolate cemetery. No triumph, no catharsis, just loss. Reed reportedly refused studio demands for a happier resolution. Composer Anton Karas, discovered by Reed playing a zither in a Vienna wine bar, added a deceptively upbeat score that only deepened the irony. The film took home the Grand Prix at Cannes in 1949, but its legacy lies in that final, brutal quiet. Some speculate Welles's limited screen time was a deliberate mystery-building tactic. Others claim it was due to tensions with the production team. Either way, what began as a search for truth ended with betrayal, a corpse in the sewer, and a man left staring down heartbreak. The Bitter Tea of General Yen. Released in 1933, The Bitter Tea of General Yen caught audiences off guard with a finale no one saw coming. Directed by Frank Capra, yes, the same Capra known for feel-good Americana, the film ends not in triumph, but in a quiet, devastating, self-inflicted death. General Yen, played by Swedish actor Niels Astor in heavily stylized makeup typical of the era, takes his own life after a series of betrayals and political unraveling. For early Hollywood, this wasn't just rare, it was almost unthinkable. At a time when interracial romance was taboo on American screens, the film dared to center one. Barbara Stanwyck plays a missionary drawn into a complex, emotional bond with Yen during China's civil turmoil. But this connection, layered with power dynamics and cultural tension, was never destined for a happy ending. Instead, Capra delivered a stark message. Some loves aren't broken by choice, but by the world around them. The backlash was swift. Though not officially banned, the film reportedly faced resistance in several markets and underperformed at the box office. Stories circulate that Capra clashed with Columbia Pictures over the film's content, with executives anxious about public reaction. And while the production code hadn't yet clamped down, some speculate the film's themes helped fuel the push for stricter censorship soon after. Film historians now view The Bitter Tea of General Yen as a bold outlier, a visual and thematic gamble that audiences weren't ready for. Some scholars argue it was too ahead of its time, both in its tragic narrative arc and its willingness to confront race, desire, and disillusionment without flinching. The Children's Hour. In 1961, William Wyler returned to a story he first tackled in the mid-30s, but this time he wasn't holding back. The Children's Hour, adapted from Lillian Hellman's controversial play, left audiences reeling with a conclusion few saw coming. Instead of courtroom vindication or moral restoration, the film ends with Shirley MacLaine's character, Martha, dying by self-inflicted means after being consumed by shame and despair. The twist wasn't just tragic, it was jarring, especially for an era still clinging to the illusion of tidy resolutions. Set in an all-girls boarding school, the plot follows two teachers, played by MacLaine and Audrey Hepburn, whose lives spiral after a student's lie sparks rumors of an inappropriate relationship. While Wyler's earlier adaptation in 1936, These Three, had stripped the story of its original same-sex subtext to appease censorship standards, this later version restored Hellman's intent. Some speculate Wyler's bold choice to retain the bleak ending was his way of reclaiming the narrative he was once forced to dilute. Censorship had loosened by the early 60s, but the film still pushed boundaries, especially in its portrayal of the devastating impact of social stigma. Critics were split, some admired its courage, others found it too grim. Accounts suggest that studio executives pleaded for a softer ending, but Wyler refused, reportedly saying that anything less would betray the story's core. Today, The Children's Hour remains one of the few Golden Age dramas to confront taboo themes head-on, and to end not in redemption, but in ruin. On the Beach. In 1959, Stanley Kramer delivered one of Hollywood's bleakest curveballs with On the Beach, a Cold War-era film that didn't just flirt with tragedy, it embraced extinction. Adapted from Neville Shute's novel, the movie stunned audiences by refusing to offer even a flicker of hope. No last-minute breakthrough, no noble sacrifice, just the quiet, creeping end of humanity. The story unfolds in Australia, the last livable place on Earth after a global nuclear war. As radioactive fallout edges closer, the characters wait, not for salvation, but for the inevitable. With Gregory Peck, Ava Gardner, and Fred Astaire leading the cast, the film had all the markings of a classic Hollywood drama, but instead of triumph, it delivered silence, literally. The final scenes show empty streets and a tattered Salvation Army banner reading, "There is still time, brother." That message, fluttering in the wind, hit harder than any explosion. Fred Astaire's role raised eyebrows at the time. Known for dazzling dance numbers, Astaire took on his first major dramatic film role as a weary scientist, and critics took notice. The film was shot largely on location in Australia, with minimal use of special effects, a deliberate choice that grounded the story in unnerving authenticity. Studio executives reportedly wanted a more palatable ending, but Kramer refused, calling any other conclusion dishonest. The impact was immediate, sparking conversations far beyond the box office about nuclear disarmament and global survival. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. In 1962, John Ford, then 67, and already a towering figure in American cinema, released The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, a film that seemed at first glance to be another classic Western. But instead of delivering the expected tale of frontier valor and moral clarity, Ford dismantled the very mythology he helped build. The film opens with Senator Ransom Stoddard, played by James Stewart, returning to a nearly forgotten Western town to attend the funeral of Tom Doniphan, portrayed by John Wayne. What follows is a revelation that flips the entire legend on its head. The man credited with killing the infamous outlaw Liberty Valance didn't actually fire the fatal shot. That act belonged to Doniphan, who chose silence so Stoddard's political career and the sanitized myth of justice could flourish. Ford filmed in stark black and white, a deliberate choice in an era dominated by color to strip away any remaining romanticism. The film's most quoted line, "When the legend becomes fact, print the legend," wasn't just clever dialogue. It was a quiet indictment of a culture that preferred comforting lies over inconvenient truths. Doniphan's character is the emotional anchor. He saves the town, loses the woman he loves, and dies forgotten. Critics have described him as the real hero who never got the credit, a role that stood in stark contrast to Wayne's usual larger-than-life persona. The film's reception was mixed, earning around $8 million domestically, modest for a film headlined by two Hollywood giants. Over time, though, its legacy grew as a precursor to revisionist westerns. Old Yeller. Released in 1957 by Walt Disney Productions, Old Yeller looked like a wholesome family adventure, complete with a loyal dog, a young hero, and the rugged charm of the American frontier. But beneath its sunny, homespun marketing was a finale that blindsided audiences. After a heroic battle with a rabid wolf, Old Yeller develops the disease, forcing young Travis to make an unthinkable decision. The dog's death wasn't just tragic, it was jarring, especially for a film that had promised warmth and resilience. Tommy Kirk, who portrayed Travis, later described the scene as one of the most emotionally grueling of his career, noting its lasting impact on the cast. According to those close to the production, Walt Disney personally backed the decision to keep the grim ending, believing that young audiences could handle, and even learn from, stories that reflected life's harsher truths. The film sparked heated debate. Some critics praised its emotional honesty, others questioned whether such heartbreak belonged in a children's movie. Rumors even circulated that Disney's choice was a quiet rebellion against the saccharine expectations of family cinema at the time. Whatever the motive, the result was unforgettable. A film that walked into theaters with a wagging tail and left with audiences in tears. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our new videos each week. Thanks for watching.